After the keynote speaker, we will then invite the other ministers to take their chair. We heard a lot in the last 4 days about the importance of reforms, the importance of efficiency. But obviously, without money, we really cannot do much. Even His Excellency, President Sali, talked a lot about money. So did the President of the African Development Bank. I have seen my brother Peter here from the MasterCard Foundation. They have deep pockets, but I don't think even their deep pockets can fill the shoes of the demand for African education. So we are going to have a conversation this morning about money. And without much ado, I would like to call upon our one keynote speaker. And you are very lucky. I'll give you 20 minutes because the other guy didn't turn up. Please take your time. And Shem, please, can you tell him when it's 10 minutes?
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It gives me a great honor and privilege to be invited to participate in this triennial event and to deliver a keynote address at this session on mechanisms for funding education, a global public good. I believe this is a timely and pertinent event coming at the heels of the adoption of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. It allows us to collectively and concertedly strategize on ways and means of attaining the more holistic, comprehensive, and ambitious goals and targets that have been elaborated. And it also provides an opportunity for renewed commitment towards supporting Africa's educational development, which is a key element in making the realization of the vision of African Renaissance under Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, possible. Distinguished delegates, there's never been greater understanding and agreement on the importance of education towards achieving socioeconomic development and broad-based stability. And we had lots of that during the previous sessions, including an appreciation that a solid investment in education has high returns in terms of economic growth. And we do appreciate that the kinds of skills and capabilities needed must entail substantial investment in education to be able to drive economic development. We also appreciated that education holds the key to unlocking the potential of the teeming youth of Africa, estimated at about 200 million. It provides them an opportunity to lead a better, more prosperous life, a life without poverty. It provides improved health outcomes and makes them empowered to participate constructively in the political processes. And if we do not manage these productive usefulness, these resources become marginalized, impoverished, and susceptible to manipulation by extremist groups. So all of these arguments make a solid case for investing in education. And we've made progress in terms of really achieving the goals set to provide education for all. We heard yesterday about achievements that have been recorded in terms of enrollment. More students than ever before in history are enrolled in schools throughout Africa. And pre-primary enrollment rates have nearly tripled. We've had greatest improvements recorded in primary and secondary education enrollments compared to other regions in the world. And More children than ever are making it through primary education into secondary school. We have higher education enrollment doubling. We have fees that have been abolished in primary schools. We have private higher education remaining one of the fastest growing education sectors in Africa. And we've seen African governments allocate increasingly growing shares of expenditure to education. Certainly the pace of progress that has been registered was inconceivable 16 years ago when the MDGs were established. These are all good reasons to cheer. But we also heard about the several challenges that persist. If we look at, I think yesterday we had a very good statistics in terms of the gap in achieving universal primary education target, in terms of African countries still lagging behind other regions in early childhood education, in terms of the primary school enrollment rate still being lowest in African countries, and in terms of the number of children that are out of school, primary school age children out of school, 66% of those reside in Africa. And we have, in addition, access to secondary school remaining low, technical and vocational education training, which is key to strengthening the local workforce, has not been the government's priority. And access is not the only concern. Africa lags far behind in terms of quality, equity, and relevance of education. The quality of education has not kept pace with the significant increase in enrollment rates. We have high primary school enrollment rates, but these are counteracted by high dropout rates and weak learning outcomes. We have an estimated 250 million children that either don't make it to grade 4 or reach grade 4 without basic numeracy skills. We have the dearth of qualified teachers, instructional materials, and infrastructure development, which has not kept pace with heavy demand. For Africa alone, for primary education, 1 million teachers need to be recruited to improve pupil-teacher ratio alone. And we've seen everywhere that rising enrollment rates have drastically outpaced an increase in education funding, resulting in shortages of instructional materials and supplies, poorly stocked libraries, and overuse of school facilities. So what is happening as a result is that millions of children, African children, are emerging from the education system lacking basic literacy and numeracy skills, not different from those outside the school system. Indeed, the quality of education is in a perilous state. Gaps falls on national governments. Domestic financing will remain the bedrock for long-term sustainable financing solutions for Africa. We all recognize that the onus is on governments to deliver on SDG 4 from its domestic resources against the agreed benchmark of allocating at least 4 to 6% of GDP and or at least 20% of public expenditure to education. Many African governments have shown commitment and political willingness by allocating increasing amount of financing for the education sector since 2000. However, most governments are still allocating less than the indicated amount. In this context, then, all countries should make an effort to surpass the target. But of course, we appreciate that public provision of educational services and financing will always be constrained by limited availability of public resources. We still believe that there is significant scope to expand the total volume of fiscal resources in African countries through improved taxation and enhancing other revenue sources. There's also, I have to point out, a significant potential to improve public expenditure management to achieve greater efficiency and cost effectiveness in the utilization of scarce budgetary resources. I've talked about the potential for taxation. Here, the challenge is to reform the tax system, strengthen tax administration, and broaden the tax base. Compared with many other countries in the world, the level of tax collection in African countries is very low. There's also scope for eliminating wasteful subsidies and channeling these savings to support education. And there are also possibilities for tapping into domestic savings, including the huge pension funds that we have with long-term sources of long-term investment, as well as tapping into the local markets. We also, despite this, I have to acknowledge, and we have to acknowledge that there is a limit about how far we can go with domestic resources, and we need to complement that with external funding sources. And donors thus have a major role to play in supporting the government's efforts. Indeed, for many developing countries in Africa, aid will remain a crucial source of education finance to meet the post-2015 targets. Here then, what is involved is a call for donors to really live up to their commitment of supporting countries that have shown willingness to reform their education sector. There has been a pledge overall by donors to devote a certain percentage of their GNP, 0.7%, to developing countries, and this has not been delivered, and we need to make a call for that. There should also be a call to increase the share of this funding, donor funding, to the education sector. And in addition to that, we need to pay more attention to improving aid effectiveness to ensure that the resources, the scarce donor resources, are used judiciously and effectively. Sometimes we need to use this to catalyze or leverage it to generate additional funding from public and private sectors. In addition to the above two traditional sources of financing, I would like to put for discussion the three non-traditional sources of financing which have not been fully exploited. First, private philanthropies have been major financiers of health sector for the last decade, but their interest in education has remained low. Pledges by private sector at the Global Partnership for Education Replenishment meeting in 2011 shows the considerable and untapped potential that could be exploited. And we also have the Global Business Coalition for Education, which provides a platform for mobilizing such resources. How can we ensure that we attract more of these funding sources? The other area is the private sector. Here, the organized private sector in particular constitutes a potential source of funding. It is a direct beneficiary of skilled workforce, but generally contributes very little to furthering education attainment in our countries, and this is something that needs to be revisited. We have to also look at innovative financing mechanisms beyond this. Traditional development finance has remained the main tool, but resources to donor being allocated by donor countries being insufficient, we need to really think outside the box in terms of how we could generate additional resources. In this regard, we can draw guidance from the experiences and lessons of various initiatives, including, for example, taxes and duties on global activities, including financial transactions and international air tickets. There is potential for using just a small amount of that could make a substantial difference. We could also look at voluntary solidarity contributions from private purchases directed towards education costs, social bonds, diaspora bonds, which are referred to tap into diaspora remittances and invest them productively in the education sector, and corporate social responsibility contributions, as well as in certain settings, the zakat and waqf. The successful example of vaccines bond issued by Gavi in the health sector is worth studying. Significant potential exists in replicating and scaling up these initiatives for the development of education. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a growing call for the establishment of a regional education fund anchored on the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016 to 25 and Education 2030 to assist in bridging this financing gap. In my view, There is a merit in this proposal, even as I acknowledge the challenges in securing buy-in for a global education fund which was led by prominent figures, including Gordon Brown and Professor Jeffrey Sachs, during discussions on the financing of sustainable development goals. I understand, though, that the Education Commission, led by Mr. Brown, is considering establishing a financing compact between developing countries and the international community. The Africa Education Fund could play an important role in this compact. There are several critical reasons why such a fund could serve useful purposes at this historical juncture. First, it could help elevate the profile and status of education on the political agenda, thus ensuring that it is accorded priority attention in the continent's development strategy. Second, it could provide a platform for renewed drive towards securing additional resources to address educational challenges. And thirdly, the fund should facilitate tapping into innovative financing mechanisms, private sector resources, philanthropies, and non-traditional development funding sources to unleash the potential of these relatively unexplored funding channels. The successful takeoff of this fund will depend, of course, on its ownership by African countries, by its institutions, by stakeholders and financiers, including philanthropies, private sector entities, and political champions. It will also depend on strong political leadership to play an advocacy role, as well as conduct intense lobbying for funding support. In this regard, a critical mass of African leaders and statesmen will need to take the lead. In addition, effective communication is required to brand and market this initiative, especially given the competing demand for resources from other sectors and other initiatives. A key challenge, of course, would be to demonstrate that this initiative has sufficient value added to generate needed support from diverse financiers, including particularly developed countries, some of which have been facing growing fiscal challenges and associated aid fatigue. Alongside the critical factors I've enumerated, attention needs to be paid to the core principles and modalities for operationalizing the fund. In elaborating these, one could draw lessons from the Global Health Fund, as well as from reflections accompanying the advocacy for setting up a global fund for education, with adaptations as appropriate to take into account African continent's specificity. In this regard, the following points could be flagged. First, particular attention needs to be paid to determining the scope, scale, and areas of focus of the initiative. The level of ambition needs to be tempered by an appreciation of realities on the ground in terms of the scale of funding that could be mobilized, which may require some prioritization. Due consideration also needs to be taken of other globally led funding initiatives to avoid overlaps and minimize fragmentation. Secondly, sound governance arrangements need to be put in place. In this regard, the fund must be independently operated, inclusively governed, transparently managed, and shielded from political interference. Third, given the considerable time and effort needed to set up a new institutional structure, consideration should be given to anchoring this fund under the umbrella of the African Development Bank, leveraging its expertise and experience, credibility and reach, as well as its recognized role as convener, global connector, facilitator, and neutral arbiter. The fund could be overseen by a strategic independent board comprised of eminent personalities representing diverse African and non-African stakeholders. Fifth, efforts should be made to overcome possible political or other biases in allocation decisions. Regional agreements outlining the shared aims and principles behind the establishment of the fund may help to overcome these challenges. 6, flexibility should be introduced to the delivery modalities to facilitate access by different development actors, both public and non-public. 7, there should be relentless focus on accountability to give assurance that resources are properly deployed and utilized. 8, disbursement should, to the degree possible, be performance-based and results-oriented, anchored on the attainment of national education development strategies. 9, to facilitate mobilization of the required funding, it is imperative to track and report outcomes achieved for funds invested. Improved data collection and results monitoring and tracking is key in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, excellencies, as I conclude my speech, I believe that today's session will provide our distinguished panelists an opportunity to further reflect and highlight on the challenges faced in financing education and to share their professional experiences, insights, and knowledge in addressing some of these challenges. I also hope that the ensuing discussion will lend support to the creation of an African fund, as well as shed light on the practical modalities for conceptualization and operationalization of the African Education Fund, which I believe will be a critical vehicle for enhancing the flow of education finance in Africa. Without further ado, allow me to once again thank ADEA for this opportunity and to wish our distinguished panelists fruitful deliberations. Thank you all for your kind audience.
Sans plus tarder, je voudrais encore une fois vous remercier de l'opportunité qui nous est donnée et je vous souhaite des délibérations fructueuses. Merci beaucoup.
Just for the benefit of those who have not been here, I indicated that some of the ministers we were expecting were unfortunately unable. Just for the and also that some of the ministers whom I am going to ask to take the floor are caught up in traffic and not yet here.
Ne sont pas à mesure de venir.
I want to thank Mr. Mukhtar from the Islamic Development Bank for a fairly comprehensive analysis of both the demand and the supply side. I'd like to with the other ministers to focus more on the supply side, because we know a lot about the need to provide education, and it would be more helpful for us to find ways of how we can meet that demand for education. I have requested the Honorable Minister of South Sudan to take the floor because two of the ministers who were expected to be here were unfortunately unable to come here. So while we are waiting for the minister from Rwanda, I think the minister from Gambia is here already. While we are waiting for the minister from Rwanda, I would like to call upon the Minister of Higher Education and Research from Senegal. Please, you have the floor. You have 5 minutes because we want to give time for people to respond and speak to specific points. And I would be very grateful if you could focus on the supply side. Where are we going to get the money to educate all these people?
Voulons donner la possibilité à ceux qui sont dans la salle d'intervenir après.
Messieurs. Alors, je vais me focaliser essentiellement sur deux expériences, mesdames et messieurs sénégalaises. Alors, je vais me focaliser essentiellement et une expérience internationale partagée qui est le PACET, Partnership for Applied Science, Engineering and Technology. Pour le Sénégal, comme vous le savez, nous sommes en réforme et lors du Conseil présidentiel sur l'enseignement supérieur tenu en 2013, le président de la République avait pris la décision de faire passer le budget de fonctionnement de l'enseignement supérieur de 89 milliards en 2011 à 126 milliards en 2017 et de faire passer l'investissement de 150 milliards entre 1960 et 2012, c'est-à-dire 50 ans, à 302 milliards entre 2013 et 2018, c'est-à-dire le doublé en 5 ans seulement. À quoi sommes-nous arrivés? Cette année, le budget de fonctionnement est de 162 milliards, soit une augmentation de 8,55% par rapport à l'objectif initial fixé. Le budget d'investissement qui était fixé à 302 milliards, qui était déjà une grosse ambition, à l'heure où je vous parle, nous avons mobilisé en investissement 448 milliards, soit 2 fois et demi ce qui était prévu, c'est-à-dire 48,34% en plus de l'objectif qui était fixé. Alors comment nous l'avons fait? L'État du Sénégal a contribué pour 170 milliards, c'est-à-dire 37,94%. Les partenaires techniques et financiers ont contribué pour 89 milliards, soit 19,86%. Ensuite, nous avons lancé un financement innovant, les projets clés en main avec financement, pour 110 milliards, soit 24,55%. Le partenariat public-privé pour 79 milliards, soit 17,63%. Ce qui fait, à l'analyse donc, nous voyons que le financement privé, c'est-à-dire le coût des projets clés en main avec financement et le montant total des projets PPP arrive à un montant de 42,18% de l'ensemble des financements pour les investissements en infrastructures et équipements et devient donc le premier point de financement au niveau des investissements, devançant l'État et ensuite les partenaires techniques et financiers. Il me paraît important de souligner que dès lors que la vision est claire, puisque le Sénégal a une vision claire du développement de son enseignement supérieur, avec un plan stratégique et un plan d'action centré autour de 11 points, que le programme est bien défini et que le pays est crédible, il est possible de faire participer au financement des infrastructures pédagogiques et sociales et de leurs équipements des entreprises privées, des institutions financières ou d'assurance. Je vais vous donner quelques exemples. Nous sommes ici au CICAD et en face du CICAD, les constructions que vous voyez, c'est l'université Amadou Mahtar Mbow, qui est une université de 30 000 étudiants, dont le coût est de 65 milliards. Les 10 milliards ont été donnés par l'État et les 55 milliards, c'est un financement clé en main avec 2 institutions, la banque UBA et une société d'assurance AMSA Reality. Ensuite, troisième exemple, c'est toujours ici à Diamniadio, au niveau de la Cité du Savoir, où nous sommes en train de construire l'Institut supérieur d'enseignement professionnel. Cet institut, sa première phase, c'est une subvention de la COICA coréenne, mais la deuxième phase, c'est un financement public-privé pour financer et la deuxième phase pédagogique et une deuxième phase qui est la création de l'écosystème économique autour de l'ISEP, qui est le centre de production et d'apprentissage, et c'est un financement qui comprend 12 milliards financés par le Fonds 6. Le Fonds 6, c'est le Fonds national souverain d'investissement du Sénégal. Et ce Fonds 6, d'ailleurs, nous avons signé avec lui pour aussi financer 4000 lits soit un total de 27 milliards. Enfin, pour terminer, au niveau international, le Sénégal, le Rwanda et l'Éthiopie ont lancé un projet avec l'appui de la Banque mondiale qui s'appelle Partnership for Applied Science, Engineering and Technology. Ce projet a ceci d'innovant, c'est que chaque pays a décidé de mettre 2 millions de dollars dans la cagnotte. Et aujourd'hui, d'autres pays ont rejoint ces pays. C'est le Kenya, c'est le Nigeria, c'est la Côte d'Ivoire, c'est la Tanzanie, c'est la Guinée. Et d'ailleurs, le 5 avril va se tenir à Nairobi le forum du PACET. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons le soutien, en plus de la Banque mondiale, le soutien de la Corée et le soutien de la Chine. Voilà, monsieur le modérateur, quelques exemples concrets de mobilisation de ressources. Merci.
Ah, this is. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I want to emphasize again that the idea of this session is to really look for additional funding to fund education. And in particular, I would like the respondents to talk about the idea of an African education fund that was mooted here yesterday by the President of the African Development Bank and also by President Sali. So I would plead with the presenters really to make a focus to let your imagination give us some ideas. I'll also give the floor to the ministers after the table has spoken. We really want some ideas, creative ideas about how we might be able to fund African education, because the demand clearly is larger than the supply. So let me now ask the Honorable Minister of Higher Education from the Gambia, Zajuf, and later on I'll ask our colleague from the Minister of Education from South Sudan. Minister, you have the floor. No, Mr. Ju first.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, and I would like to apologize for running a little bit late. I yesterday suggested certain initiatives for the funding of education in Africa. I talked about the diaspora coming up with a fund that they themselves would control, because our experience in Africa is that when government has too much money, part of the money goes somewhere else. So I would suggest that we exploit the possibility of organizing our diaspora through our foreign ministries, respective foreign ministries, so that they could have a pot, that would have a polyvalent approach to funding education. One would be, and it could be in cash and also in kind. One would be for them to physically provide money, fund people in Africa, in African universities, in African institutes of higher and further education. But also they could, since some of them are working in universities abroad, they could also sponsor people to go abroad from their respective countries. That's one approach. The other one is that they could link their universities to our universities, and then they could have team training in our own universities where they would develop the capacity for further capacity development in our own countries. The third would be in kind, where, I mean, in the area of science, technology, and engineering, I mean, they could facilitate, you know, the supply of those materials to our own universities in order to build the institutional, I mean, capacities of our own universities. And then the fourth is they themselves, who are in academia, could take sabbatical leave and then come and sort of complement our own local staff in our universities. The other area of exploration would be, I mean, we have African countries that produce oil. I mean, through the AU, they could have a petroleum fund for education, you know, where they would contribute. And people who want to, I mean, thank you. People who want to do petroleum engineering or engineering in general, you know, so that we encourage engineers in different fields, mechanical, I mean, civil engineering, electrical engineering, and so on, or petroleum engineering. Those students could be funded, I mean, through that, you know, Africa-wide. The third one is I supported the initiative of the ADEA initiative for funding for education. The Gambia is solidly behind that, and we would obviously, when the protocols are finalized, we will sign up to that. You know, the other area of funding is we look at our GSM. There is no GSM in the world that does not make a profit. There's no GSM. All these GSMs, whether it's Sonatel, Gamtel, Malitel, whatever tel it is, there's nothing. At least, I mean, with the help of the AU and respective national governments, they could donate at least 1% or 2% of their profits to this fund, so that at least it would be, you know, it could be used for the students of Africa. And also, you know, they could also go and do computer engineering, telecom engineering, and they could also, you know, benefit from that and send their own people to, you know, under that fund to be sponsored. I think that is another area. We also have, some banks that operate in Africa, and like the Standard Chartered Bank, which is Africa, has banks in Africa, Eco Bank, and other banks in Africa that could also, under the aegis of the AU, you know, help, because these are profit-making bodies and they make profit out of us, out of the citizenry. So I think, they should at least pay back in terms of the profits that they make, for the African child, so that at least that child, has a bright future. There is the fuel companies, the Total, Shell, you know, some of them are responsible for some environmental degradation. We remember the case of Nigeria and the loss of I can't remember the name at the level of coup d'etat, but somebody was hanged because of that. You know, these are people who, you know, should also, I think, contribute to the education, you know, of the African child through this fund that we are talking about. Then, you also have our hoteliers that, is what we should do to make sure that we make a quantum leap of progress, so that in our rendezvous with 2063, we would not be found wanting. Thank you.
Minister, I particularly take note of the fact that if we value education, we could certainly impose a levy. I remember in a number of African countries that when the HIV/AIDS crisis came, many of them were able to generate millions and millions of dollars by imposing a very small levy on the payroll. So I think these are some very, very good ideas. What I find missing, however, is when the president of the African Development Bank talked yesterday, he specifically talked to the African Education Fund. And I really would like speakers to offer their views on this, because this is an important issue, and even to make suggestions as to how it might be structured, where it might be sitting, etc., etc. This is really one of the important purposes of this segment. It is now my pleasure to ask the Minister of Education from our youngest country, Minister Lam from Uganda. And please remember what I said. Let's not focus on the need for education. Let's focus on the supply side. How can we get additional resources? What mechanism can we use to get additional resources? Is the idea on African Education Fund good? Add some flesh to this.
Thank you, moderator. My colleagues, the ministers who are here, and panelists. First of all, I would like to apologize for the first 2 days. Our flight was cancelled on the 13th of this month to come through Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And therefore, we were pushed to 14. And 14, we have to spend a night in Addis Ababa so that we come and arrive around 5 p.m. That's why we miss the first 2 days. In this juncture also, I would like to congratulate you for the job well done up to now. I was impressed when the last speaker was talking about the child. I believe he was talking about South Sudan. South Sudan, of course, is the younger child of United Nations, is the younger child of Africa. And mothers know this. When you have the last born, you know how to treat him or her. So from this panel, I'm invited all African leaders and the international organization who are assisting Africa to focus on South Sudan. That South Sudan is a traumatized child that has been at war since 1955. And then all through a little bit break in Addis Ababa agreement on 1972, and then kick off in 83, another war, which is the longest war in Africa. And I could say it also in the world. That kick off 83 after 2005. We had a bit a break, and then we gained our independence in 2011, and that also, because of that trauma of that long war, also among ourselves, we break up for the last 3 years. Despite the fact that the South Sudan has a bright future in terms of mining resources, in terms of animal resources, in terms of fisheries resources, agriculture, which is vast agricultural land that and which is raining 9 months a year. But despite all this trauma, we are not able up to now to establish ourselves. This is an invitation to all this panel that we need to focus on South Sudan to help him kick off, to help it kick off, so that we establish and we make use of our resources that we have now. As a Minister of Higher Education, I'm newly came in August. what I found ahead of me that there is 5 public universities and 4 private universities. But one of them, which is the mother of all these universities, is University of Juba. That was established when I was 3 years primary student. But if you go to that university at the moment, it is, you cannot call it university. That was during the war between the North and the South, was a military base. Whatever is there is dismantled. Therefore, you go back even to have other universities who are newly established. There's no base for it, and we are starting from zero. Therefore, when you are talking of technology, when you are talking of development, I would say that it is a joke. I've been listening to it since yesterday. For us, it's a joke because they are not there. There's no technology. I'm Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, but with no technology. So these are the main focus. We are doing our part. What we are trying to do has our own. We newly drafted National Student Fund, the Act, which is the law that will allow all of us, whether you are a public servant, you are a minister, you are a president, to contribute to that fund. It will be compulsory to anybody, and all, as well as public sector. This is what, within our capacity, we are trying to do. But I would say clearly that we are being neglected by international communities, and especially in Africa. There is no critical fund since South Sudan being established for education. The organization who are in South Sudan. One panelist yesterday was mentioned that the fund that are brought by the international organization, half of it, I would say 75% goes to salaries and holidays and research. The 25% we are having, they are having, I don't think it's serving us. Therefore, we need a focus for the younger nation to be given priority in years to come. In my own experience, I approached the UNESCO office, which is with us. They were telling me that they cannot support the higher education, they only support the general education. But if you are having a general education, a well-equipped general education, let us suppose, which is not the case in South Sudan, but they will come to the university that has no laboratories. A university that, so you are graduating a medical student that never seen a body. So they will only gain the theoretical part of the studies, but they don't practice it. Is that the general education you are talking about? So whatever they have learned at the lower level will be zero in our capacity. So these are the challenges we are in, and there are more. We are talking of engineers who have no workshops in these 5 public universities in South Sudan. Therefore, I would like to invite you that from here, let us give a special focus to South Sudan. I'm requesting, what I do also as a minister within my capacity, I'm lobbying the world and especially the concerned country, African country, that if they could offer some scholarships. While we are trying to establish an adequate education background in South Sudan, also we are requesting the other world around us to offer us scholarships so that the education will not wait. They've been there for that war. The technology is waiting for them until we establish the country, like what we were in the war. Therefore, Recently, I just came last week from Botswana with a good offer of scholarships. And also I've been to Egypt, I've been to Ethiopia, Morocco also are offering some scholarship. Therefore, this is a great invitation for you of all African that while you are trying to establish the newborn baby. Also, should be a part of the Egyptians now are very proud of being the most country that offered us for the last 20 years or 50 years a scholarship. So now they are proud of having 3/4 of the ministers in our cabinet now that are graduates of universities of Egypt, so including the vice president. So this is, we wanted you also to come to us and in that manner in a longer future. So we, with these few remarks, I wish I will have a longer term to explain what I was alluding to. So in that fund, please from here, let us focus on South Sudan and let us meet the fund for 2017, 18, 20 to South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for reminding us that we have a child among our midst who needs probably more than the others. Those of us who have been to your beautiful country certainly know the tremendous needs you have and the constraints that are facing you. I would like to call upon the Honorable Minister Musafiri from Rwanda to come and talk. But please, again, I think that it would be useful really to talk more globally or more regionally than to talk about individual countries and to focus on this idea of an African education fund. Good idea, bad idea. If it is a good idea, how might we actually start constructing it? How might we start looking for sources for funding for it? I would be very grateful. And I will later on, if we have any space in the program, ask our ministers in the front row also to give their voice.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, moderator. And once again, agenda. And we realize that actually realization of education goal, it becomes a precursor even to fulfillment of all other development goals we are endeavoring to achieve. So the idea of the NATO initiative such as PASET, which has already started initially with the African countries, and of course with the objective of expanding, getting at least 10 countries participating in the next 5 years, is much welcome. But also, if we can get something which can bring more African nations together, I think we can be much stronger when we are together rather than pursuing some individual initiatives. We also support the calling that the governments need to increase the budgets to the education at the tune of 20%. And here I want to salute actually the government of Senegal, because the president yesterday clearly told us, whereas the sustainable development goals requires at least 20%, the Senegal has already committed around 26%. So this is a very good initiative, and I think it can be emulated by other African countries. But on one perspective, much as we are looking for these resources from governments, from development partners, we are very conscious that the money which we receive from our development partners to support us in several development initiatives, this money comes from the communities of these countries. It is therefore important to have the corresponding commitment from our own communities. You know, we can always solve our own problems. If we get support from external, that should be an additional way. But we must be at the forefront of taking responsibility, you know, of the solution to solve our own problem, including mobilization of the resources. And it is actually from this perspective, I would like to share 3 unconventional methods which we used in Rwanda and which we think they can be shared at the continental level. The first one, it's the community-based approach to school construction, where Rwandans within their local communities were mobilized to participate in school construction, including the building of the classrooms, the latrines, and the school furnitures. The approach was designed basing on the Rwandan traditional called umuganda, an arrangement where people together participate in a joint activity for the well-being of their neighbors, community, or national good. The community-based approach to school construction proved cost-effective with regard to time and other resources. A classroom built using the new approach would cost 4 million francs instead of 9 million francs, cutting down the cost per classroom by nearly a half. The use of the community-based method of school construction development yielded spectacular results. 8,000 new classrooms were constructed, 20,000 latrines were constructed within 3 years, saving the Ministry of Education an estimated around 49 billion US dollars. If we had to use the conventional method of building classroom, this one would cost us a huge budget, and it would have taken not less than 15 years to reach where we are today. Because when we scaled up our basic education from 6 years to 9 years to 12 years of basic education, that one which took us to the enrollment rate of 98%, you know, we needed a huge amount of budgets in order to put up infrastructure in place, which would commensurate with the drastic expansion in terms of enrollment. But I think the community-based initiative, it was very, very useful. And it is a model actually which has been liked even our development partners and the other the countries from the region when they come to visit us to see how we did it. So it is something which we would like to say actually to the continental level to see how we can be the source of inspiration and the source of looking the sustainable solution to solve our own socioeconomic problems rather than depending on the support from other development partners. The second, the homemade solution and an conventional method, it is the Agaciro Development Fund. This Agaciro Development Fund is the Rwandan Sovereignty Wealth Fund. The name Agaciro, it means dignity, which was embraced as Rwandan's key moral value in its journey towards sustainable socio-economic development. The Dignity Fund, it was set up in 2011 with the aim to build up a public saving to achieve self-reliance, maintain stability in terms of shocks to the national economy, and accelerate Rwanda's socio-economic development goals. The fund is unique of its kind as it was created basing on voluntary contributions from Rwandans at home and even Rwandans living in diaspora. And the beauty of the Agaciro Development Fund, it leaves no one behind. I will give you an example. it went to the extent of even contributing 100 Rwandan francs using your airtime. And therefore you can send just an SMS to Agricultural Development Fund where you are able to contribute just 100 Rwandan francs, maybe from 500 Rwandan francs you have in the form of airtime. So if you can get 12 million people, each one contributing 100 Rwandan francs, you put them together, then you get a significant amount, which is again invested in the area of interest, in the area of priority. And the agricultural development funds, it builds pride among the people of Rwanda. And these are the things which we need actually to emulate at the continental level. We need to build pride among our people, again to be at the forefront of contributing resources and efforts in terms of solving their own problems. The third initiative, which is just beginning, we are putting up the pension fund. The pension fund, it's geared towards savings for development. And there are two flagship programs which are going to be undertaken through the pension contribution. One, it is saving for the cheap and affordable housing for the communities. And secondly, it is saving for education. Over the years, the government have been laboring to give free access to the basic education where government is paying and the parents are not asked to pay anything. When it comes to the higher education, the government also have been contributing the scholarship, but also the soft loans. But it's not sustainable. And we want to find a way parents and the communities can serve right from the beginning towards building the fund which you can draw from in order to support education for our children when it comes to the higher education. So savings for the shelter, for the low and cost housing, but also serving for education fund, we think it is also another good initiative. There are so many other, the things we want to share, but I thought these three are very key. The community participation in terms of the building classrooms, the secondary, the building the sovereignty fund, the third also the long-term savings in order to save for education, but also for the housing. I thank you, dear moderator.
Thank you very much, Minister, for those concrete examples of how we can raise additional revenue. Organizers, I don't know how much time we've got to give ministers in front to talk a little bit, because this is really an urgent issue. Do we have 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. So I would now like to give the ministers seated here in front to make their own intervention. I believe this is an important issue because without money we cannot generate education. So who would like to take the floor, please? Those who know me know that if you don't take the floor, I will have to nominate somebody. The minister from Mauritius, we cannot have a lady not speak. Please, madam, come and speak from here.
Good morning, everybody. Just to add one point, since we're talking about financing, we have one possibility of engaging the community, and especially the corporate community, in the delivery of education. There is a possibility of coming up with a corporate social responsibility, where in a region, if you have certain corporate bodies, they can, by means of a tax deduction, provide maybe 1 or 2% of their, any amount that government decides of their of the money, their revenue, to social functions, social roles. So the corporate social responsibility could be used for the purpose of education in a particular area. So maybe this is one source that we can think of. And in terms of financing, it is important that governments themselves decide to spend and to provide money for the education sector. Because through all research done, and from the Sustainable Development Goals as well, we have noted that the centrality of education. So if we want to succeed, we need to have the commitment of governments to spend that money, to provide that money to the education sector, and then engage the community as well, and also the corporate body. Thank you.
Merci, mesdames et messieurs. Je voudrais d'abord appuyer l'idée que madame la ministre de l'île Maurice a présentée ici. Il faut que le gouvernement s'engage effectivement d'être le plus grand bailleur de fonds pour le développement de l'éducation en Afrique. Par leur intervention, ils donneront un signal important pour que les autres participants puissent aussi s'associer à cet effort. Mais je voudrais donner une information ici, que quand on a cherché à connaître le coût de l'éducation en Angola, on s'est rendu compte que les familles déboursaient une somme considérable pour la formation de leurs enfants, sans avoir la notion de ce qui est réalisé. Ce qui veut dire que si nous considérons que l'éducation c'est une question de tout le monde, alors il faudra que tout le monde partage leurs responsabilités. C'est une question de dialogue avec les familles, les communautés, pour les engager dans cet effort d'appuyer l'éducation, puisque l'éducation est fondamentale pour tout le monde. Alors on a instauré, c'est une question d'initiative personnelle, on a instauré des commissions d'appui des parents aux écoles qui, dans un dialogue avec la direction des écoles, ils définissent les besoins qui ne sont pas couverts par le financement de l'éducation par le gouvernement, et à travers ça, ils sont arrivés à donner leur appui pour résoudre certaines questions qui sont ponctuelles, mais qui ont besoin de ressources pour le fonctionnement des institutions scolaires. L'enseignement supérieur peut être considéré comme un domaine de production, et à travers ces productions qu'il peut partager avec les entreprises, il peut constituer des sources de financement qui peuvent appuyer la réalisation de leur travail. Être utilisé pour le financement de l'éducation, ça pourrait aussi constituer une partie complémentaire de cet effort que nous voulons réaliser. Donc nous voulons seulement dire que l'éducation étant une responsabilité de tout le monde, il faudra que cette responsabilité, pour qu'elle soit assurée, puisse compter la contribution de tout le monde. Et nous pensons, d'après ce que nous voyons, au moins en matière de gestion de l'éducation en Angola, que les familles, même si on les considère des familles pauvres, ils ont toujours quelque chose à mettre à la disposition de la formation de leurs enfants. C'est une question de dialogue, une question d'explication, une question d'engagement et qui peuvent assurer d'une façon spontanée sans qu'ils se sentent obligés. Parce que quand on demande qu'ils doivent payer les frais scolaires, bon, la question est vue d'une façon, une exigence qui leur est faite. Mais quand on leur demande de pouvoir pallier à certaines difficultés aux institutions, ils le comprennent et ils donnent cette contribution. Donc on peut profiter pour le développement de l'éducation. Voilà ce que je voudrais partager avec vous. Merci.
The last speaker of the session, Eric and his friend are looking at me. The last speaker is the minister from Burkina Faso. I'm sorry if I didn't have enough time to open it up, but it's a fairly important topic.
Merci, monsieur le modérateur. Bonjour tout le monde. Par rapport à la question du financement, je voudrais m'associer à l'idée du ministre de la Gambie sur l'importance de solliciter la diaspora africaine. Aujourd'hui, nous savons que les transferts que cette diaspora effectue au bénéfice de nos populations dans nos pays est largement plus importante que les aides multiples que nous recevons au niveau bilatéral, multibilatéral, etc. Donc, il est important d'abord de faire prendre conscience à cette diaspora qu'elle compte pour leur pays et que sa contribution est déterminante pour une cible aussi noble que l'éducation, vu son importance. Il y a également un deuxième axe qu'on peut envisager. C'est celui d'élargir, comme on le fait au Burkina, l'assiette fiscale. Quand on regarde les dépenses des ménages, l'éducation, dans le meilleur des cas, vient en 4e ou 3e position. Et dans les premières positions, en dehors du logement et de la nourriture, on trouve parfois la communication électronique telle qu'on la connaît aujourd'hui. Et au Burkina, nous envisageons de taxer cette communication pour dédier une partie au financement de l'éducation. De façon plus large, dans nos pays, nous avons aussi parfois des ressources qui sont disponibles et dont l'utilisation pourrait nous permettre d'éviter des endettements parfois insoutenables sur les marchés financiers. Au Burkina, nous avons décidé, il n'y a pas très longtemps, de créer une caisse de dépôt au niveau national qui centraliserait les ressources générées par des structures comme la loterie nationale, la caisse de sécurité sociale, la caisse de retraite des fonctionnaires, etc. Nous avons un ensemble de structures comme ça dont les ressources, dont la gestion des ressources était laissée aux bons soins de conseils d'administration qui parfois prenaient des décisions très hasardeuses. Nous avons décidé de consolider toutes ces ressources dans une structure appelée caisse de dépôt et de consignation afin d'avoir un aperçu là-dessus. Et c'est des ressources que l'État central pourrait emprunter pour financer donc des activités prioritaires. Voilà les axes que nous voyons, en sachant que lorsque nous parlons de gratuité de l'éducation, en fait, nous devrions plutôt parler de qui est-ce qui paye l'éducation. Merci.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I have to be gender sensitive. So I'm going to call upon our colleague, the Minister of Education from Mali, to take the floor. And she'll be the last person to speak. Madam.
Bonjour tout le monde. Excusez-moi, je pense que c'était le dernier intervenant. Je suis Thérèse Faye-Diouf, directrice générale de l'Agence nationale de la petite enfance et de la case des tout-petits. J'ai voulu prendre la parole juste pour poser un peu une question qui a été effectivement posée hier par le président de la République, la question du financement de la petite enfance. J'ai écouté un peu les débats et je n'ai pas entendu une question qui concerne spécifiquement cette question, qui est aussi fait partie des défis à relever en Afrique. Remercier M. le ministre Mary-Teuw Niane de passage, qui vraiment abat un travail extraordinaire au Sénégal. Merci beaucoup, M. le ministre. Je voudrais parler, si vous le permettez, de l'approche communautaire dans les structures des IPE. Les structures des IPE, c'est les structures de développement intégré de la petite enfance. L'approche communautaire, ça veut dire la gestion des structures par les communautés. C'est important et les communautés jouent aujourd'hui un rôle très important. Il y a le partenariat local, mais aussi il y a la participation des collectivités locales, qui est aussi d'une importance capitale et qui impacte positivement les résultats dans le système préscolaire. Ça, quand même, je voudrais le dire. Et la participation des collectivités locales, c'est surtout avec les fonds de dotation. Les fonds de dotation des collectivités locales. Ça, quand même, c'est important. Aujourd'hui, au Sénégal, il y a beaucoup de collectivités locales qui soutiennent, en tout cas, la petite enfance, mais ce n'est pas tout le monde. Autre aspect que je voudrais partager concernant le financement, c'est un programme que l'on appelle le programme parrainage des bébés. C'est un épargne, c'est un système de solidarité qu'on impulse dès la petite enfance, de bonne volonté, qui font des épargnes pour des enfants. Et à partir de 6 ans, cette épargne sert quand même à payer la scolarité de l'enfant. Donc, aujourd'hui, plus de 2000 enfants sont bénéficiaires de ce programme au Sénégal à travers l'agence. Donc, je voudrais vraiment remercier encore une fois tout le monde pour me permettre de parler de la petite enfance ici. Et je pense que comme c'est une question de financement, ce sera l'occasion pour tout le monde, tous les pays, de veiller à ce que vraiment les financements concernant la petite enfance soient revus à la hausse, comme il est souhaité par les orientations internationales. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam. Last but not least, but absolutely last, otherwise Eric will kill me. Minister, Honorable Minister of Mali.
Thank you so much, moderator. In fact, I was pleading for her, but let me just add a few suggestions as to the funding of education. I think travel agencies, this is a possibility to put a small tax on tickets. And also, I think we have a lot of mining companies. That's also something good into. Thank you much.
This is the end of our session. I would like to thank on your behalf the various speakers who have taken the floor. And I would like to make a suggestion, because this is an ongoing debate. I hope the Secretariat has taken extensive notes, that you take this up, and I'm particularly directing Peter as the Executive Secretary, as the Chair of the Executive Committee of ADEA, and Oli, really to take it up probably to the next Council of Ministers, because unfortunately, because of the change of venue, we did not have a critical mass of ministers. So I really think this is such an important issue that you cannot just leave it here. You have to take it to the next level. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup à Monsieur le modérateur et aux animateurs de cette première plénière. Eric.